Hi guys, this is Isabel Prito, and this is my presentation on rabies lyssavirus. Taxonomy and identification. Rabies virus is an RNA virus belonging to the genus Lyssavirus, which has the defining characteristic of the two-unit bullet-shaped lyssavirus particle. Similar viruses that share this characteristic include Mokola lyssavirus, Chamonix bat lyssavirus, and West Caucasian bat lyssavirus. There are a lot of viruses under the genus Lyssavirus, but these are the ones I thought were most relevant to rabies virus. You can see a image of the defining bullet-shaped particle down below. First, you have the RNA helical structured core, the intermediate matrix protein, and the envelope membrane bilayer on the outside. History of rabies. Rabies is one of the oldest and most well-known diseases to man. The first written report of rabies comes from the Mosaic Esmuna Code of Babylon tablets in 2300 BC. Origins of the word rabies comes from the Latin word rabire, which means to rage, and the Greek word lysa, meaning violence or to do violence. Actually, interestingly, from the Babylon tablets, it was about the fines you have to pay if your rabid dog bites someone else and they die of rabies because your dog bit them, and what fines you have to pay for the family and stuff. Other aspects, people in the past who thought they had been bitten by a wild animal or that might have rabies would commit suicide out of fear. Ancient remedies included holding patients underwater or in hot oil, invoking saints, and making remedies from dog hair. All of these were superstitious. I mean, those that didn't die from being drowned or being held in hot oil normally just died of rabies if they had it. Other times, through the use of invoking saints by sprinkling threads from their clothing on the rabies patients, or making remedies from dog hair, like concoctions that they took hair from the rabid animal and put in and then gave to the patient to eat or drink. Again, any recovery that we kind of see from this, most likely they just didn't have rabies. But there was a lot of fear around this disease, so people were pretty desperate for any sort of remedy that they could find. Another common one was the utilization of madstones, which is kind of like a hairball that is formed in the stomach of animals. And prominent figures actually, such as Abraham Lincoln and Queen Elizabeth I, utilized these as preventative measures. It was thought that it sucked the rabies out of the wound site. Abraham Lincoln's son was bit by a rabid dog, and so he sent people all over the country looking for madstones in order to treat his son. His son did end up living. And then Queen Elizabeth I was known to have a madstone on her at all times, around her neck. So yeah, this is a disease that has been feared for thousands and thousands of years, and people have tried many, many different treatments for it, and mostly, if not all, unsuccessful. The pathogenesis and transmission of this disease. So in almost all cases, rabies virus is spread through the bite of a rabid animal or direct contact with infectious material from the rabid animal, such as through saliva or bodily fluid. So if you have an abrasion on your skin, or you have some sort of open wound and the blood or the saliva of a rabid animal gets in there, you will contract it. And then, of course, if you're bitten by a rabid animal, The virus enters through the peripheral nervous system. It may then replicate in muscle tissue um, prior to its invasion and replication in the central nervous system. Shortly after the invasion that enters the central nervous system, it will spread throughout your body to surrounding vital organs and tissues, eventually ending up in the salivary glands. Once it's reached the salivary glands, that's when a lot of times you'll start seeing symptoms. Incubation can last weeks to months. A case with an unusually long incubation period that I thought was really interesting was the case of a 48-year-old man living in South India. And from the time of his bite to the time of his death was 25 years. He was completely asymptomatic up until 2 days before his death, which was, again, 25 years after being bit by a wild dog. He came to the hospital, was anxious and exhibiting signs of hydrophobia, but he was otherwise pretty neurologically competent. He could tell the doctors when he was bitten. He could tell them how he was feeling. He was not having the typical symptoms of agitation, delirium, hallucinations, and he actually appeared to be recovering before suddenly succumbing to aspiration. That's why the doctors weren't convinced it was rabies, but upon further examination of the brain during an autopsy, it confirmed the presence of rabies in his brain. Signs and symptoms. Once rabies has reached your central nervous system and spread throughout to your organs and tissues, only then will signs typically appear. This is what makes this virus so scary and fatal, is because you don't know that you have rabies until you start having symptoms, and at that point the virus has spread throughout your entire body. Symptoms will include, though, itching, prickling sensation, weakness and discomfort, and then anxiety, confusion, agitation, and then delirium, erratic behavior, hallucinations, and then eventually, towards the end stages of the disease, hydrophobia, insomnia, and severe cerebral dysfunction. Again, it starts off with almost flu-like symptoms, and then descends into a lot more serious neurological issues. 59,000 people die of rabies each year. 40% of deaths are from children under the age of 15, and 95% of deaths come from Asia and Africa due to poor socioeconomic conditions. Preventative measures include keeping your distance from wild animals, vaccination of domestic pets, which is actually required in the US, seeking immediate medical care and vaccination if you're thought to be exposed to rabies, and pre-vaccination for high-risk individuals. High-risk individuals are those who work in the veterinary field, wildlife workers, and just individuals who in general may come in contact with wild animals. Here we have some photos of animals getting vaccinated, because 99% of cases actually come from dogs, domestic dogs. And once again, once symptoms appear, there is a virtually 100% fatality rate. Vaccines are available prior to symptom appearance, though. That is when they will be effective, and is pretty much the only life-saving measure that you can take. Louis Pasteur created the first vaccine in 1885, which was revolutionary, but some people actually wouldn't take it because of how bad the side effects were. Obviously, since then, more effective vaccines have been created. Modern vaccines, which require 2 rounds, one round on the first day and then another round 3 days later. The most common vaccines for rabies is the HDCV vaccine, RIG for the non-previously immunized, and the PCECV vaccination. Future outlooks, which is kind of also just basically more preventative measures, since like even though modern vaccines are highly effective, they are less successful in the countries that need them the most due to poverty and vaccine misuse um, in the countries, yeah, with the highest rabies endemics. In countries with the highest fatality rates, vaccine supplies, education, and intervention are minimum or non-existent. Kids are not educated in school about prevention, about going to a doctor if you're bit by a dog in the street, like wild dogs in the street. If your own pet dog, if it's just outside and it's been exposed and then it comes back. Um, and then, yeah, misuse and, I mean, yeah, the impoverty of these countries definitely affects the access to vaccines. So actually the most effective course of action is to not like try and maximize the human population being vaccinated, but to maximize the vaccinated canines to try and attain herd immunity. So once again, because 99% of cases are from domestic dogs, the best course of action is to get about 70% of canines vaccinated per country. Again, we've come a long way from, treating rabies by drowning people, but we still have a long way to go towards helping these countries that deal with the majority of rabies fatality cases, especially these lesser educated and more impoverished countries that have less access to resources. But once again, we're on the way there. That rabies cases have gone down significantly since the 1960s. So we've definitely made progress, and there's a positive future outlook for sure. Thanks, guys, for watching, and here are my resources.